No end in sight. Protests sparked by the death of George Floyd drag into another night. Thousands of troops from the National Guard deployed across the country as riots spread to 75 cities. Pubs open up and beauty's back in business. Several states ease back towards life as we knew it. And coming up on the business running for their lives, how the fitness industry is surviving the pandemic. Hello, welcome to ABC News. I'm Karina Carvalho. Mayors are calling for peace and more curfews are being imposed in cities across the United States, but violent protests are continuing for another night. The National Guard is again out in more than 15 states, and there's anger at the actions of some police to crack down on protesters. 2 officers in Atlanta have been charged for using excessive force, and people are back out on the streets of New York, Boston and Los Angeles. There have now been protests in at least 75 cities, and stores have been looted in Philadelphia and Santa Monica in broad daylight. Alongside many state authorities, Donald Trump has condemned the violence, and he was rushed to an underground bunker as protesters gathered outside the White House. From Washington, North America correspondent David Lipson reports, a warning some scenes in this story are very confronting.
And here's that video, Jennifer. Oh my gosh, the speed at which that truck approached.
What started as a fight for justice has descended into chaos. On a Minnesota freeway, a tanker speeds directly toward a crowd of protesters, narrowly avoiding catastrophe. Protesters chase down the truck and swarm over the cabin. Eventually, the driver is dragged out and beaten by the mob. Before police arrive, dispersing the crowd and taking the driver into custody. 75 cities are living through these protests. Many are in flames. More than half have imposed curfews. In Atlanta, 2 officers have been fired for using excessive force, arresting 2 young African Americans. Body cam footage shows the woman screaming for help. In Michigan, every car on this street is on fire, windows smashed, tear gas deployed.
Tell your brothers and sisters, we will not win this fight with guns. It's not going to happen. We got to be peaceful.
Tear gas and rubber bullets too. In the beachside community of Santa Monica, 1,000 National Guard soldiers are patrolling LA streets, helping 20,000 police on the ground. With so much division, chaotic confrontations have been taking place across the country.
Well, this is the centre of Washington, D.C., the capital city of the world's most powerful nation. And as you can see, the people have just totally taken over. No matter what the police and other authorities do across America to try to stamp down on this protest movement, it seems that it keeps springing back up.
Protesters have defied Washington's first curfew. The National Guard deployed, but hundreds demonstrated as close to the White House as they could. One thing is bringing protesters together. People all over the country have started kneeling, a symbolic protest against police brutality. Now even police are joining in. George Floyd was the match that lit this explosion of violence. It's now taken a life of its own, and even further charges against the others involved in his death may not be enough to stop it. David Lipson, ABC News, Washington.
The US President has blamed one left-wing group for the violence at the protest, naming Antifa and vowing to designate it a terrorist organisation. But as Chief Foreign Correspondent Philip Williams reports, it may not be that simple, and the political stakes for Donald Trump are rising by the day.
While the burning and looting has shocked the nation, it's also divided those on the front lines of the protests.
Ain't nobody coming to protect us.
Let me tell you
we got to start our own life.
I understand, but let me tell you something right here. This 16, he's 16.
And they gonna kill him next
He's
week.
16.
What we gonna do?
You tell me.
What we gonna do?
This ain't the way.
Many see this as opportunistic looting, taking advantage of a stretched police force and nothing to do with the actual protest. But President Trump sees a far-left conspiracy to attack American values, and he singled out the left-wing Antifa group, saying it was responsible for the violence and destruction. He tweeted, "The United States of America will be designating Antifa as a terrorist organisation. These people are anarchists." There are elements of Antifa who in recent years have armed themselves to combat what they see as a threat of fascism and racism. It's a loose alliance of like-minded groups with no formal structure or leadership.
Done with people like you.
And there have been isolated attacks on those seen as right-wing opponents. But here it appears protesters are handing over a man said to be an Antifa supporter to the police. But for many, taking to the streets in countless American cities, this is not about politics, but confronting deep-seated racism.
We are living in a country that has, for a long time, brutalized African Americans, from slavery to lynching to Jim Crow to mass incarceration and now to police brutality.
For President Trump, the turmoil is both a danger and an opportunity. The risk is being seen as impotent, unable to restore order in this fractured country. But by identifying Antifa as the enemy, he has a target he says is responsible for the violence. And the original outrage, a black man killed by police, is more easily lost in the smoke and mirrors of an intense political blame game. Philip Williams, ABC News.
Now to the easing of restrictions in Australia. Queenslanders are being asked to hit the road to help the struggling tourism industry. All travel within the state is now allowed with the exception of Indigenous communities, which remain shut. Queensland